Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Evolve with Emily show. I'm your host, Emily Hayden, and today's guest is a friend of mine, Chris. He is the host of the Nichols and Dimez podcast. It's a podcast that focuses on entrepreneurship and the lifestyle, mindset, and all the hacks that go into the entrepreneurship journey. Today's conversation was really incredible. We talked about how he's evolved as a person as a result of starting a podcast, sticking with it through the first 50 episodes and more, actually being consistent, which a lot of people don't do. They give up before they even get to that point. And how interviewing so many different entrepreneurs has reshaped the way that he thinks and the way that he shows up to his own life. We also talk about jiu-jitsu and how that's impacted our lives because it's something that we connect on as well. And we get into a lot of other things that will be helpful. So just listen to the entire show. If you guys enjoy these episodes, do me a favor. Make sure that you're subscribed to the podcast wherever you watch or listen. Make sure that you leave a rating and review if you enjoy it and you want to give a little bit of love back. That is definitely a way to help the show. And feel free to tag us on Instagram. Let us know what you thought. Let us know what your biggest takeaway was. Or you can just say hi. You know, it doesn't have to be anything insightful. You can also just say hi and let us know that you're listening. All right, guys, let's get into today's show. Chris, welcome to the show.
Emily Hayden, thank you so much for having me. What an honor.
Yeah. So we met at Ocean Pacific Gym.
We did.
Shout out to the gym.
Yep.
We love it there. And met through jiu-jitsu. And we both podcast. So we have a lot in common. In-person friend, which I love.
Yep.
And the reason I wanted to have you on today's show is because of your entire last year of life and what you decided to take on. So you started a podcast, right? And you decided that you were going to go all in. And what I saw was that you actually stuck with it. You have how many episodes now?
50
episodes of the Nichols and Dimez show. And you interview entrepreneurs and you ask about their journey, the advice that they have. So I can only imagine how much personal growth you've had since starting this journey. So take me back to, well, let's actually just start here. I want to learn first, what are some of the most impactful takeaways that you've learned from all of these entrepreneurs?
I love that question. And it's absolutely shaped who I am to this day compared to a year ago. I set out in January of 2023 to start this podcast. And I said, no matter what I get in response to this, I'm going to stick to my commitment of doing an episode per week. And doing that for a year, and everything I researched before starting this thing was one thing that kept coming up was a consistency piece. Everyone said, oh, people who start a podcast, they don't get past episode 3 or
so true.
21, right? And if you make it past this point, then you're in the 1%. And then of whoever's left, you make it into that 1%, right? And so that was a big motivation for me to just stick with it and keep the blinders on. And I'd say one thing that I learned from all the people I had on my show, like including people like you, and I'm also thankful to have you on the show, was one reoccurring piece of advice was that you need to keep your blinders on. You can't worry about what other people think. And it sounds cliche, but it's you almost have to be brutal with how you phrase it. And some of the people who I had on would say, don't take feedback from anyone. Like, don't listen to feedback. Yeah.
Wow. Like once you've made your mind up, just do it.
Yeah.
I love that. I feel like it's full ownership of what you're choosing in your life.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah. It was just an incredible experience. And just to add to that, one question I would ask at the end of every episode is, what's an entrepreneurial life hack that's against the mainstream belief? Something unique to you that you could share with the audience. And there was a variety of different answers to this, right? And some people would take that in a different way and they'd give me something tactical like, oh, maybe do this in your marketing strategy. Or they'd give some sort of more bigger picture life advice like, oh, make sure you work out, you have your fitness, that'll clear your mind, right? And then some more mindset stuff. And those were the pieces of advice that I think I took the most benefit from in my journey doing this, like the one I just said, and having your blinders on, not worrying about what other people are thinking, keep going in your path. And then I guess that's one trend. The second big one I would say in that category would be to make sure that you are aligned with who you're trying to be first before trying to start punching the brick wall and build whatever it is you're building, and making sure that those internal blockers are out of the way before you can you start doing all the busy work.
That's so true. Oh my gosh. I feel like these kinds of conversations are what a lot of people are missing in order to make the progress that they need to make in any area of life. Because, one of the reasons why I love podcasting is because it's such a huge core value of mine to have intentional conversation. And conversation where you actually connect, right? And I feel like in today's fast-paced society, we all have so much going on that not a lot of people sit down and actually like conversate like this.
Right.
Have an actual conversation with depth and with meaning.
Yeah.
Man, I've even been on like some dates before where I'm like, I kind of wish this was just a podcast interview so that we could get to the real shit, because I'm tired of having to do this like surface level. It doesn't interest me.
It's funny you say that, because I think I've been accused on dates sometimes for being too much of a podcaster.
Oh, stop. Oh, that's so funny. Yeah, no, I actually enjoy it. I like getting to the depth.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, that's so interesting. So, okay, going back to when you were going to start the show, were you worried of what other people were going to think? Like, what were some of those initial fears that maybe you experienced? Did you experience fear? And if so, what were they?
Yes. All of 2022, the reason why I didn't start this podcast that year was because of my hesitation of putting my voice out there.
Did you worry about like how my voice would sound?
It wasn't that as much as it was, I got over that pretty quickly, and I did I did a number of practice episodes that never got released just for myself that year to see how I sounded on the microphone, and heard all the ums and ahs and all the nonsense that comes out of your mouth, right?
So, you become real self-aware when you podcast. You're like, why do I do that?
Especially when you're editing your own stuff, right? But I think, in the industry that I've traditionally been in, which was the corporate tech industry, it can be a small community, and there's, it's kind of a small world, right? So, and I'm sure this applies to many different industries of being in the corporate world in general, right? You are extra cautious with what comes out of your mouth, what you say, especially in the past few years. And not that my show is politically oriented, is business oriented and self-improvement, development oriented, but every little thing gets pulled apart, right? That you could say. And so I think I had such a fear of maybe being looked at the wrong way or judged for that, when a big value I have is to not let that stop you in general, right?
Wow.
And so it took a lot of just practice and journaling about what my purpose is to do in order to get past that. And the way that this really started is I did this program with a buddy of mine who's a life coach. His name's Frankie. And I did this journaling thing for about 3 months, where in doing the repetition of answering some of these questions of what my ideal life looks like in whatever amount of time, the one thing that coming up is I have a podcast.
No way.
Yeah.
Like you just knew that. You could see that in your vision.
Right.
That speaks to how important it is to have a vision,
right,
and to know what you're working for, because it really can guide you throughout your life and your decisions. How cool that it kept surfacing for you. It's like, even if you wanted to ignore it, you couldn't.
Yeah, exactly. And that was the idea of this. It's called a dream builder exercise.
Okay.
And it helped me a lot. But it basically, every week I would listen to some prompt and then answer a bunch of questions. And some questions were different each week. The topic was different, but then some questions would remain constant each week. And
I like that.
Yeah. And so those constant questions, you would see how your answers would change over the course of this 3 months. And so a few things that stayed in line, one of them was, I have a podcast, I have a voice, and this is something that I felt very called to do. Really, the idea came into mind years ago, but 2022 was when it became a real, vision, right? And I was hesitating, my career, this and that. And then 2023 was the year of starting new things.
Oh, I like that. Was that your intention for the year?
Yes, I had a list of goals. And like, for example, one of them, start jiu-jitsu, something I had been wanting to do for a long time, to start this podcast and remain consistent rather, on a weekly basis. And then, some other things, but those are the two, I'd say, big ones that I'm going into this year with momentum. And, I have momentum with it, and now I'm working on building in those areas.
How freaking cool is that? What do you, like, I just think that's so respectable to choose what you want to do. You felt the fear. You decided to work through that. And I like how it wasn't like, oh, I just flipped a switch and felt the fear and did it anyways. Yeah. It's like, no, actually, I needed to do some internal work. I needed to discover those blocks. I needed to discover my vision, get really clear on that. And then it sounds like that's what was able to empower you to finally make the decision to go all in on it. So I want to talk a little bit to identity, right? Because I feel like when you step into this, like I have a podcast and I'm a podcaster. Yeah. Did you have a little bit of imposter syndrome at first? Like, were you hesitant to say I'm a podcaster? How did that sit for you?
Absolutely. Well, what a good question. And this is something that came up in a recent episode I just did about the 4 big lessons I learned from 1 year of podcasting. And that was related to this fear of putting the voice out there. And yes, I absolutely had imposter syndrome by starting a podcast about entrepreneurship when I didn't necessarily see myself as an entrepreneur. I hadn't started or built a successful business, right? At least in my terms. Sure, I sold some stuff on eBay in the past, but but that's not what what my vision is when it comes to entrepreneurship. So my way of working around that was, okay, well, in order to avoid that, how about I make it completely about the guest across from me? And that's genuine. I really am curious about the people we've had on the show. And that's been great. And I've learned so much. But, I've realized I've learned a lot from analyzing that throughout the year and realized, okay, I'm not really retaining an audience because a lot of the people I have on they have completely different audiences who will show up for their person and then they'll leave, right? Which is cool, right? I get it. It's my first year. It's going to take a while. And I accepted that going into it, right? But yes, that was something I think naturally I overcame throughout the year of doing this by surrounding myself with these people and adopting the mindset that they generally would have, like this one of not worrying about any feedback. But I truly did learn a lot, and it changed the way I think. It really opened my mind to risk. Yeah. And being more comfortable with it, right?
Wow. So in this risk, it sounds like you gained a lot, actually. So I'm interested, you started this podcast about entrepreneurship and yet you weren't an entrepreneur. And I think that's so special because I think that that's probably something that holds a lot of people back. Like they're very interested in something, but they feel like that's not their current field or not their expertise, or maybe they haven't dove into that for themselves quite yet. Right. So how do you think that impacted your own entrepreneurship journey? Right. Because it sounds like that's like at the beginning is starting a podcast. So podcast is a business. Like now after doing it here, you get it. Like podcasters get it. This shit is a lot of work.
Oh yeah, sure.
People do not realize. So you've started your own business. So how do you feel like these episodes have impacted your entrepreneurship mindset and journey in general?
Yeah, I love that you asked this. And so one thing I would add to what I was just saying earlier about making it about the person across from me is another way I'm phrasing my approach and purpose of this is that I'm using this as an opportunity for me to learn from the people I'm having on the show in order to serve as a launch pad for me going into my entrepreneurial journey.
Love that.
Whatever that is, right? Whether that's just creating a media business out of this podcast or other ideas I might have, right? Which I'm working on right now.
That's so cool. Right. Oh, I love it. And I can like feel your momentum too. And it's very exciting. It's very like fiery and passionate. And I love that because you have to have that in order to make it. So, okay. You mentioned something very important and you were talking about how just being around the right community and how this community has changed the way that you think. Are you able to pinpoint any specific ways and how it's changed how you think? I know it's kind of an open question, but I'm just curious, if you kind of tap into the version of you about a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, maybe even 2 years ago, are you able to identify maybe 1 or 2 ways that you think differently now?
Yes, I would say getting comfortable with loneliness.
Really?
Because a lot of the entrepreneurs I've surrounded myself by, I've realized, even though they're doing this noble thing and maybe they're popular people, perhaps they have a big presence, I have seen in the work that they do and the journeys that they're on it's a very lonely way to live. But it's for the right reasons, right? It's not a depressing thing at all. It's like, hey, this is the journey I'm choosing because I'm trying to have this impact. And naturally, this journey will surround myself around a certain type of people who get it.
Yeah.
Right. And many of my friends who maybe I went to college with, I've reconnected with them in such cool ways that I maybe didn't talk to them for years.
Wow.
Until I did this podcast, and I did an episode with them, and every episode has been a bonding experience.
Wow. That's really beautiful. And I definitely can relate to that the journey that we go on by having our own businesses can definitely be lonely. And that's why if you guys listen to the episode on his show where he interviewed me, I had shared that my, I guess, life hack for the entrepreneurship journey was community. And the reason I said that is because it is so lonely. And because, I know I think it's really important to know yourself deeply. And I know myself deeply. I thrive around other people's energy, especially like in a work environment. Sometimes I'll go to a busy coffee shop and that's when I'm my most focused because I actually love the energy of other individuals. So what I found for myself in my entrepreneurship journey is that it can get lonely and how impactful the right community can be. So something that I did, which I don't think I've shared with you just yet, but I started recently my own women's mastermind and it's just myself and a couple of girlfriends. It's a closed mastermind. It's not for profit by any means. It's just a few hand-selected friends of mine. Okay. And we get together monthly and we do a hot seat. And so in that hot seat, we share everything going on with our business, our passion, what's going on, the back end, if we need help with that, our vision, our goals. And that has been such an amazing piece in my journey recently because we have gotten support. We have gotten, 3 or 4 other minds that can dive deep into our business. And it's provided for so much value, so much support that even when we're not together, we are feeling like the energy and the momentum of the other entrepreneurs that are on the similar journey that are crushing it. We have a group chat and we like send little things to each other here and there. And so again, just going into how important community is. Sorry if you guys
the dogs are barking.
As you hear our puppies barking. It's been a really incredible piece for me. So while yes, it can be lonely, I really am a firm believer we can create any experience that we want to have, which is why I started this little women's mastermind, because I really wanted that experience of feeling supported by other people that were on the same journey.
I love that.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. So how long have you been doing the mastermind?
Yeah, we just had our second meeting. So we're just doing it monthly. And our first one was in December. The last one we just had was this week, actually. And it really is it's been something that has helped us create momentum in our own lives. So yeah, I just thought that was important to share because I know a lot of people listening probably experience that loneliness as well. Yeah. And you can always either join a community that exists or create a community of your own and by the way, community could just be one friend. It could be one friend that you're like, hey, let's go have like a work date together. Me and my girlfriends do that kind of often. But kind of getting back to your entrepreneurship journey and the things that you've learned, what do you think are a few things that hold people back from going on their own entrepreneur journey?
Honestly, the 2 things we just talked about stand out the most to me is this idea of the risk part of it, right? We all want security. We're all programmed to want that. I think with the status quo way of living, or perhaps the environment that we grew up in. What did your parents do, right? What did your friends do who you grew up and went to school with? What are they doing now? I think that's a huge influence on a lot of people. And they see, this is what everyone's doing. This is what I have to do too. Because a number of entrepreneurs I've had on the show, they naturally are better at just stepping into dark territory because both of their parents were entrepreneurs.
Oh, really? A majority of them come from entrepreneurship.
I don't know about a majority, but I've noticed it as a trend.
Oh, I just realized I do too.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
I guess I never thought about it that way because it's just what was normal. But my dad's always had his own business. Yeah. That's so interesting.
That's right. Yeah.
And also it makes me think about how you said that your mind was changed from doing this show. And it makes me think about how exposure to something different than what we have grown up to have is so important and can be so impactful for people's journey, right? Like imagine someone that grows up in poverty and does not know anything about financial security or abundance or anything like that. So I think your journey just highlights to me how important it is to have exposure to different things to really open your perspective.
Right. 100%. Yeah. And just having conversations with the guests I've had on the show off camera, off the microphone, that was honestly a huge part of where I grew. And it's just throwing around ideas, and I'm asking them, hey, what do you think of this content marketing strategy I'm doing here? What do you think of this way of formatting this podcast or this description, whatever, this reel I made for Instagram, right? And we can just go down really fascinating rabbit holes talking about this strategy.
Fascinating rabbit holes.
Yeah. It's like rabbit holes worth going down, right?
Yes. That's funny you had to clarify.
Yeah.
True. There are some that will just take you into a deep, dark corner and you're 3 a.m. Why am I here right now?
Right.
Why are we on this spinning planet?
Exactly. Yeah. And, I would go... Some of the guests I've had, I traveled to all my guests, right?
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So I had everybody come or I would go to them wherever they were. Took a bunch of trips around the country this past year to do that. And sometimes the guests would host me. I'd stay with them for a couple of nights.
Fun.
Yeah. So it's like a good time to reconnect, to learn or to learn what they're up to and then have good context going into the podcast. And around that time, we're talking about strategy. I'm learning about what they're trying to do with their business, right? And then there's so much stuff you can relate on. And so back to what you were talking about earlier about the idea of podcasting being a job, a full-time job, all this stuff is another big lesson I learned around why it is a full-time job. Because I can relate to any business owner with me doing this podcast, because I think people have a perception of podcasters, this is just something for fun they do on top of whatever else they do, right? And generally that's what it is, I think, for a lot of people. You, right, with your brand, and you have this podcast too. Andy, right, with Real F and First Form, and he's running a massive business, right? So a lot of these people kind of use it just to put their voice out there, but a lot of these people also have a team doing a lot of the work for them. I did all the work myself, right? From finding guests to doing the research to coordinating the interview, setting up the equipment, making sure the equipment works, troubleshooting.
So true.
Yeah. And then going into having the conversation and then all the post-editing work, which is the bigger portion of it all. Making sure it looks good and figuring out the audio, right? Making all the content to market the episode.
How fun was all of that nitty gritty? I'm just curious.
Yes.
Were you throwing a party the whole time, dancing?
I honestly, I had some fun.
Throw any computers.
Yeah, almost. I'll have to rewind in my head if that ever happened.
Yeah.
No, but it actually was fun to a degree because it tapped back into this creative bone I've always had in my body.
Oh, cool.
From when I was a kid, I used to like making videos on iMovie.
No way.
Yeah, I was really into it. And I thought I was going to be a filmmaker when I was a kid.
No way.
Yeah.
Wait, let's talk about that for a second. That's so interesting.
Sure. So I think when I was a kid, I was very creatively motivated in a lot of ways. And I think just in the environment I grew up in with the school I went to, it was a pretty strict academic school. They wanted everyone to be very much in line, right, with whatever the structure was. And for that reason, I think I really struggled. I probably would have struggled in most school situations just because of my personality and how I was in that way with ADHD and all that stuff, kind of just being all over the place. But I did have a good creative bone and making art, and I kind of discovered these things on my own, right, on the computer, and figuring out how to make cool movies. Like I made little commercials.
Did you?
Yeah, I made a commercial.
Like what kinds of commercials?
For the Crest toothpaste that I had.
Stop. You made a commercial for Crest toothpaste. Do you have this video somewhere?
I don't think so.
Call your mother after this podcast.
I will.
Oh my God, that is epic. That is so epic. So
that was a fun one.
Yeah. What else did you create? Do you remember?
I think I tried to actually make a movie where I was like James Bond.
Of course you were. That's awesome.
Yeah.
How cool. It's interesting how when we look back at even like childhood desires, how sometimes we have this desire that, you know, when we're a kid, we may express it in a certain way, like I'm going to be James Bond in a movie.
Yeah.
Which I'm not saying that you can't. It's totally possible. I believe
Thank
it.
you, Emily.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I was just dreaming about that last night.
Were you?
No.
Oh, I was like, see?
Maybe tonight I will.
Yeah. But it's funny how like we have these little inklings of what we were created for. And then like fast forward years later, and in this season of your life, it's been highlighted. Yes, a podcast is a part of the vision. And who knows where that leads 10 years later. 10 years, you may be the James Bond in 10 years, right? But I just think it's cool because I feel like life always gives us these little breadcrumbs. And if we are aware enough and intentional enough, then we can pick them up and start to really see that the pieces have always been there all along. That's really cool. Tell me a little bit about when you were growing up. So you used to live in Hawaii, right?
I did.
That's so freaking cool.
Yeah. So I was born in Coronado here in San Diego, and my family moved to Hawaii when I was not even 2. So 1.5 years old, we moved there. Everybody asked me, oh, military? Because that's like a natural first reaction, right? No, that's not why we moved. My dad is a doctor, and his job brought us out there. I do have a lot of family in the military, being from Coronado and grandparents and sideways and so forth. But we went there for my dad's career. So it was really a new journey for my family, right? We were alone going out there. We had no family, no connection, where in Hawaii, there's a tight-knit community like that already out there with the local community. So, you know, I will always be forever grateful for growing up there and the values it taught me. I think there's some unique, beautiful values that come with the Aloha culture. What
are some of those? Like, what's a value that really just stuck with you?
Well, I'd say 2 of the big ones are humility and strength. Yeah, I think humility is very much appreciated and expected in the Hawaiian culture. And you know, that's just something that comes with the Polynesian culture and the Asian culture that kind of dominates Hawaii.
What does humility look like there? Like if you were to see someone really living out that value, what does that actually look like?
That's a great question.
I know it's kind of a hard question to answer maybe, but I'm just curious because we see these, I feel like we have these like fake ideas of humility, which is why I ask, almost as if like humility means you can't be confident or you can't know yourself and be confident in who you are, right? But I feel that from the Hawaiian culture, it's not what that means.
Right. I think when you talk about fake humility, that translates to people who will just say what you're supposed to say, but that's not actually how it feels. That's not actually what they mean.
I love the way that you just said that. That's not actually how it feels, because we live in this energetic world. We're these physical human beings in this energetic world, and we can always feel into a situation. So when we're feeling that it's not humility, I think it's very good of us to trust that feeling.
Yeah.
So humility and then strength. Strength in what ways for you does that like show up in your life, or how is that something that guides you?
So that was certainly a value that I was familiar with from a young age, just by being surrounded by this culture. And I think it really comes from the Polynesian culture in Hawaii. And it's the idea, you know, they're very much like, you know, a man needs to be a strong man, right? And that's something that I grew up with, and kind of like this resurgence in our culture today, right? That we're seeing in terms of masculinity versus femininity.
Yeah, no, don't whatever.
Sorry.
You'll get so canceled.
I'm sorry.
That was awesome.
Well, whatever in the pronunciation, okay.
Femininity.
Y'all know what I mean. All right. Anyway, but yes, just the Hawaiian culture was, you know, you're expected to be tough. And so that was something that motivated me at a young age to, you know, become strong, start lifting weights, and be good at sports, right? That was something that was very appreciated and respected in growing up. And in my struggles, kind of with being being different from everyone around me, both in terms of just my personality, me being all over the place. It was hard for me to pay attention, and being a white boy in Hawaii, all that stuff kind of, it drove me.
I didn't think about that.
Yeah, it's definitely a part of it.
That's true.
Yeah.
Interesting. Because whenever you said being different, I was like, what is he talking about?
Right.
Is that a story? But I understand how growing up, if you like physically look different than people around you, you'd probably like feel that. Did you feel like welcomed in that community?
When I was young, it was very difficult. Like when I was a kid, no.
Kids are kind of mean, huh?
Yeah, for sure. And you're confused as a kid too, right?
Like you don't know why they're being mean.
Right. Yeah. So I really felt it when I was in elementary school, and that was difficult. And I really grew into my skin, I think, in high school. Later in high school, it was very different. I was able to have a strong identity and strong presence, and I had a lot of great friends and of all different walks of life, right? All different types of people. And, I think taking those two big things with me have served me throughout my whole life, as far as the positives of growing up there.
Yeah. Wow. What a cool experience. And it's, I remember when you first told me, I was like, wait, what? Yeah. That's so awesome.
It throws a lot of people off because for some reason, people don't expect that.
It's true.
When they look at me or talk to me.
Yeah, that's very true. Okay, I'm curious, going back to the podcast and things that you've learned, because of speaking to all these entrepreneurs, it's not just about business. You talk to them about their mindset and their lifestyle. Are there any practices or daily regimens that have been shared with you that impacted the way that you show up to your own life? I can imagine if you ask them something about their morning routine or maybe like a nighttime routine or something they do every day to get ready for the work day. Was there anything from your podcasting journey that shifted how you show up to your life?
Sure. Well, I'll just share one of mine that has alignment with a lot of what my guests have shared. And it's journaling every morning and night. And I try to be as consistent as I can. Sometimes we miss it. Yeah. But it's a very quick practice. I think it actually comes from Tony Robbins. But we have...
He's going to join.
There we go. We have...
For those listening, my Frenchie Frankie is joining us because he has separation issues and my dog walker starts next week. Nice. Not this week. All right.
I've had a few dogs a part of every podcast.
Oh, good. Okay then.
Hey guys, now it's okay. Be in my lap too. But yeah, this journaling technique is just the starting the day off with putting down 3 things you're thankful for. Okay. And then 3 things that will make today great. And then 3 daily affirmations, right? Okay. Who you are. And then at night, it's 3 things that were great about today, 3 great things that happened. And then I usually actually skip this part just because I don't like going to bed with this mindset, but it's 3 things that could have made today better. But perhaps for some people, it could be a great thing to add. I see. Okay. I like that. I like that you have a knowing of yourself where you're like, this would actually make me sleep worse. Right. Yeah. So I like that you just kind of, take what helps you and leave the rest. That's kind of something I share in my coaching and also in my podcast is like, hey, if this helps you, take it. If it doesn't, leave it. Yeah. So have you always journaled or when did you start journaling? Gosh, good question. It's I think consistently probably 5-6 years ago. Oh, okay. What got you started? Do you remember? I think it was the content I was consuming, listening to podcasts. Oh, okay. Yeah, I think the first podcasts I really got into, Tim Ferriss was a big inspiration early on. I would listen to him commuting to work when I lived in San Francisco. And the type of people he'd have on, a lot of people who are familiar or promoting of this self-work type activity. And so I was very, influenced by that. That's so cool to hear, right? Because like evolving and personal development and healing journey, returning to love is like all of what I do and what I'm about. So even just to hear that there's, versions of people listening out there that even something as simple as journaling actually helps and they actually do it. And then it becomes part of their life. Like it's just such a cool thing to hear and have reflected. So I love that. Yeah. Do you have a journaling routine? My journaling routine has evolved, just like everything else in my life. So I actually created a journal. It's the Daily Evolve Journal. And I sold that a few years ago and it was
what I did. So it was like my exact framework. And it was a few different things, but somewhere along the lines of like setting your intention for the day, gratitude for the day. So not just writing down like what you're grateful for, but really tapping into the energy of gratitude. And so really connecting the feeling state to the mental state that's writing it down. And then also like prayer, if there's something that you're praying about, and your intentions. And then at the end of the day, it was like reflection of, okay, you know, how did the day go? Did you live out what you said you were going to be? So did you really live with intention, or were you out of alignment with that? Yeah. And if so, like, how can we evolve that for tomorrow? So a similar kind of thing, like a reflection, an intention setting. And now I utilize a lot of different tools during my practice in the morning. So it might be something like breath work or meditation. If I do journal, maybe some days I need to just get some things out. It's a really good release. So I might just get some things out. But then after that, I take time and I script these days. So scripting is like you're scripting the movie of your own life.
Oh, cool.
And so rather than rehearsing the past, which is typically what a lot of people do when they're journaling, they're writing down the past. So when you're writing it and you're speaking it and you're feeling it, you're in the past, which is good if you need to get it out and let it go, but not good if you continue there. So scripting is, writing out, like if I were to do it today, maybe I would do a short-term scripting and I'd say, today's March 17th, 2024, and I just landed this gig and it feels incredible to be chosen for this opportunity. I work so hard. I fully feel that I deserve it. I'm writing out like what my life looks like and feels like and the things I like to accomplish. And then I close my eyes and I get into this visualization and I feel the energy of that. And I just say, thank you. And then I let it go.
That's some deep manifesting. I love that.
Yeah. I love that stuff. So and I found that sometimes I need to go back to the basics and sometimes I just need to keep it simple and write down like what I'm grateful for and what my intention is for the day. And that really helps too. So, okay, I want to get into jiu-jitsu.
Let's talk about
it. So we love jiu-jitsu over here.
We do, yep.
You decided to start. You've been going for a couple times a week, at OP. And recently you've taken it up a notch. So talk to me about your jiu-jitsu journey. What got you started? What do you feel like is the biggest impact that it's had on you since starting?
Sure. So when I've always liked the UFC, right? That's kind of a basic answer of why people get into this kind of thing, I think. But for me, when I moved to San Diego, I just naturally connected with a certain community of friends. And many of these people were very involved in the MMA or jiu-jitsu community, or very big in it or very accomplished in it. And pretty quickly I became good friends with these master black belts in jiu-jitsu or professional fighters. And, of course, there's a good connection with like the special operations military community, which I'm somewhat connected with as well. So I think a lot of that just has a community that has overlap, right? And in getting to know these people, I realized, wow, this is really my type of tribe. These are people I love being around. And they speak so highly about this sport, this activity, however you look at it, right? And it seems like, and then the content I consume, the people who I like to follow, let's take Joe Rogan, for example, right? So just a lot of people who I really want to, be around or be more like. There seems to be a trend of jiu-jitsu, right?
That's such a good point.
Yeah.
You're very observant. I love that.
Thanks.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, okay. So you decided to start.
Yeah. So it took a while to get going with it. I think it was just like, again, the hesitation of starting something new, right? I've been so set on my lifting routine for years and training that way. And, and then of course you have fears. Oh, could I get hurt, right? Is this going to impact this or that? But I finally just started going. They started offering the class for, as a part of the membership at our gym. And that was a very easy introduction to this, where I met you, right? And, meeting everyone I've met through jiu-jitsu, whether it's at some house party event or at the gym on the mats, the people are amazing in general, right? Yeah. I'm sure there's a few bad eggs, but
of course, everywhere.
Everywhere, yeah. But that was something that stood out to me, and doing it, I call it casually for most of last year, once or twice a week.
Casual jiu-jitsu.
Right, exactly. Sometimes I'd travel during the weekends. It was Friday, Saturday. It was tough. I was loving it. I love the feeling it would give me, the idea of solving a problem and how this would impact my mind. The mind work was more than anything. Wow. Yeah.
Like it shifted how you thought through things.
Yes. I think it relaxed me. And it brought me this peace after doing it.
Yeah.
Because I think for a while there, I used to play contact sports when I was competitive, and then it was just, all right, go to the gym and we work, right? And so I almost lost touch with this idea of like being able to wrestle with somebody, right? I played water polo. Wrestling was a big part of that sport.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That sport is gnarly.
And it's something that I really enjoyed. And it kind of brought me back to my competitive sports days by actually, doing hand-to-hand combat with somebody.
Yeah. And I mean, if you're going to be James Bond, you have to know jiu-jitsu. I think that's a prerequisite.
Right. That's right.
I totally relate with a lot of what you're saying. It's so interesting how similar some of our path is. Like a lot of my really good friends that started coming into my field are all black belts and world champions and own their own schools and gyms. And they're just like so incredible at it and always spoke highly of it. And then when I started, similar kind of thing. It was such a dope community.
Yeah.
What do you think is maybe a characteristic of the jiu-jitsu community that is different from other communities? Like something that draws you to that community in particular?
Well, I think there's a trend of humility.
That's what I was going to say too.
Yeah. Right? Because you really learn quickly that it doesn't matter how big or strong the other person is compared to you. If they know this, they can beat you, and that, like, I never will look at somebody who looks scrawny or unathletic and say, okay, I'm going to beat the hell out of them. No, it's like in the past, maybe you think that way, right?
Yeah.
But absolutely not.
Yeah.
Right? This is like the one martial art that is designed this way.
Yeah.
Where you can beat somebody, much bigger and stronger. And I just had Jeff Glover on my podcast, one of the best grapplers of all time. And he's not a bigger dude, right? And his nickname was the Giant Killer because he would beat up all these guys way bigger than he is.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Giant Killer.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you feel like jiu-jitsu has shaped the way that you show up to problems in life? Like when you encounter a challenge in your entrepreneurship journey, when you encounter a challenge, in friendships or relationships, like how has it impacted your ability to show up in those spaces? Yeah, great question. I would say it softens the intensity and anxiety around it. That's such a good answer. That is such a good way. Okay, continue.
It's kind of like the idea of cold plunging. Right, you listen to some people who are big about cold plunging, like you, right?
Like, hello,
or Rogan, all these people, right? They say, I start the day like this so that I get the hardest part out of the way right away, and then everything else seems easy, right? It's similar with jiu-jitsu because you are finding yourself in a position where you're trying to prevent yourself from being choked unconscious.
So true.
Or getting your arm hyperextended, right? And you're fighting this and you have no choice but to fight it. And I actually heard Mark Zuckerberg on Lex Fridman's podcast a few months back, and he had a really good way of describing this.
He trains?
He does.
I didn't know this.
Yeah. Remember they were talking about this Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg fight? You heard about that?
That's real?
Yeah, it was for a bit.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
That's cool. I think that should happen. That'd be so fun to watch.
It would be interesting, yeah.
I would watch.
Yeah, but Zuckerberg's actually gotten pretty good. I've seen some footage of him.
Wow.
And, Lex is obviously really good, and they train together and anyway, all these guys. But Zuck talked about how it's the only thing he can focus on when he's doing it. And that's such a blessing you can only imagine his life and all the shit going through his head and on a daily basis, right? Or coming at him. Yeah.
That's such a good point. I always think about that. Like, how do I feel after I do something? So for example, with yoga, after I do yoga, I feel really peaceful and center, and I'm really glad that I went. After jiu-jitsu, I feel empowered. I feel incredible. I feel sometimes like I got my ass kicked, but like in the best way possible. Like, wow, that was really impressive. I have no idea what they just did to me. Like, I got introduced to 10th Planet has this thing called the Twister. Okay. Do you know what it is?
What is the Twister?
It's like, I think it's like their signature move, but I got welcomed into 10th Planet with that. It's like they twist the fuck out of your body. I don't even know how to tell you. I'll show you on the video. Okay. But it was just impressive. I was like, ouch, but cool. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know, so I like it because what you're saying, it's very mentally stimulating. And especially when you have so many things going on throughout the day, it's so nice to like, you have no option but to be present. Yeah. You know, and one thing I've recognized recently is like my ability to like be in those really, you know, highly stimulating environments where you're about to get choked out and you really just think like, what can I do? Right? Because like, okay, I can't move this arm. I can't do this. Yeah. What can I do?
Exactly.
And so, I feel like jiu-jitsu is like this ultimate troubleshooting.
Yes. So well put. And I had someone on my podcast named Dom Bell, who's a big influencer in the community. And that was, we had a clip, I think that went somewhat viral, where he was answering the question of, like, how does he view jiu-jitsu? And he said he never views it as fighting a person, but as looking at the shape or the position their body's in and figuring out how to solve a problem. Yeah. And that was such a cool answer, I thought. And it's really been, honestly, how I've seen myself looking at it all along, right? I never look at the person like, oh, I want to beat you up. No, it's just like, okay, how can I do this strategically, right? Yes. And how do I take out the idea of me being strong, right? Because at first you kind of just survive by using strength, right? Like you're strong, right? And you know, me too. And then it's like you learn that, okay, if you're using strength, you're not doing this properly.
And you're going to waste all of your energy, and the good ones are just going to wait for you to run out of energy, and then they're going to take you when you're weak.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I feel that.
Yeah.
Well, what's exciting for you? What is something that you're looking forward to in 2024? What can we look forward to with your podcast too?
Yes. So I'd say the one big thing for the podcast this year is I'm taking YouTube much more seriously. Okay. I'm posting full video episodes on YouTube, which is exciting. It's a lot more work, but I think it'll help engagement and connection with the audience in some pretty cool ways. Yeah. And so that's one big thing I'm excited about. I'm going to start implementing more solo episodes because I was talking about this earlier, but I had a guest pretty much every week with the exception of maybe 3 weeks in 2023 of doing a solo episode. But my audience hasn't really gotten to know me very well. Yeah. And, you know, that was driven by my imposter syndrome at first. Yeah. But after a year of doing this, I've pretty much put that behind me because I feel like, hey, I've built something cool. I've got 50 episodes. I've got a lot of content. I was just listening back the other day and I was like, okay, wait, me talking to this guest, this is actually valuable, right? Yeah. And so now I'm at a point where I'm trying to really take all that I've learned from them and in a digestible way, share that with my audience in some more solo episodes so that I can create basically give people a reason to follow me regardless of who my guest is going to be.
Yeah. Well, you've provided so much value. Like this has been such an easy, fun podcast to do because you're so well spoken and you have so much value to offer.
Thank you.
So yeah, I'm really excited for you to launch the solo ones. And I think too, like sharing your story is so inspiring. Do you know how many people want to start a new sport like jiu-jitsu, or they want to start a podcast, but they're feeling all the things that you've been feeling. So even just, you know, speaking to that version, I think would be so helpful and so inspiring to a lot of people.
Thank you. And the cool thing about it is we're in the very early stages of it still, right? I don't feel like I've hit a milestone. I mean, I could say I have doing a year of it.
You have, for sure. That's a big milestone. Most people never get to.
Right. But one thing you said recently in response to a post I made about honoring all the guests who were on my show in year one, thanking them for helping me build the Nichols and Dimez show to what it is, was you said, you're doing it. I remember you said that. Yeah. I'm like, wow, that's really powerful. It's like, I'm doing it. Right. And you said that to me when we did our podcast too. Yeah. And it was such a good reminder, which I'm forever thankful for, is that and this is cliche, but it's so true. The best part of life is the journey itself instead of just reaching that destination.
So good. I feel like it's such a good way to end the show too. It really is, because when you learn to be present in the moment and find your peace in the journey, it's like you get to just throw your hands up and be along for the ride, because life is a ride.
Right. Yeah.
You'll have some ups, you'll have some downs. So not putting too much pressure on the ups and the downs, but learning just to love and appreciate wherever you're currently at. Mm-hmm. And don't forget that we came here to have fun.
That's right.
Like as I was getting ready for this podcast, I just put on a song that felt fun and empowering. Yeah. So I'm doing the camera stuff, but like I'm enjoying my time while I'm getting the camera ready. And I think finding a way to romanticize your life, which I know sounds quite feminine for the masculine viewers, but like for you, just finding more ways to like inject some fun into your life.
It's all about the word choice.
Yeah, totally. So for you, maybe you're not like dancing to like I Am Woman or anything like I was earlier, but you could find your own little taste, your little, flavor for it.
Right.
What song would you choose?
Well, I was just going to make a joke and say a Shania Twain song instead.
Wait,
but
that's amazing. Can you please post a story with Shania Twain? But you really got to like commit to it.
You know what? Maybe I should. I'm trying to do things more out of the box.
I think that would be hilarious. And also, like, you're so serious, but you have a very funny side to you. So
thank you. I think you've only learned that just from us becoming friends, right?
Yeah, exactly. Which is why I think you should show it a little bit.
I've been told that too. For friends who
I'm so serious.
Yeah.
I've been told that.
Yeah, I have been. Well, it's like friends who know me well and know how wild I can get and kind of sick I can get, sick. In a fun way, funny way, but it's something that hopefully I can let out a little more in the right amount.
You're like, in the way that doesn't get me canceled.
Right, exactly.
That's when you ask your trusted sources, like, is this too far?
Yeah.
Because there is a line these days. There really is.
Yes, there is.
We can have our offline friendships, and then we can post our humor online, but with,
with our boundaries.
Yes. All right. Well, Chris, thank you so much for being on today's show. I've enjoyed connecting with you and learning from you and just hearing more about your journey. So thank you for your presence.
Well, Emily, I just need to say before we finish, you've been a huge inspiration for me in this podcast. And when I first met you, how down to earth you were, and then realizing like what you did for your work and the podcast you have with Evolve with Emily show. It really inspired me. And then you coming onto my podcast, it was all part of this journey of looking at how you do things and just the attitude you have and how you approach life on a day-to-day basis. It's very inspiring for a lot of people, including me. So thank you so much.
I appreciate that. I received that fully. Thank you. Well, if anyone wants to connect with Chris, then I'm going to make sure to put his podcast, his Instagram, all of his links down below. So make sure to give him a follow. If you enjoyed today's show, don't forget to tag us on your Instagram. We'd love to hear your feedback, maybe what your takeaway was. And don't forget to go show him some love, give him a follow on Instagram, subscribe to his show, and listen to one of his latest shows, and then let him know what you liked about it, because we are both in the podcasting world, and it helps when we get that feedback, when we know what you actually like.
Absolutely.
So don't be afraid to connect and reach out, send him a DM, say what's up, send him a funny meme, see if you guys can connect over some humor.
I love it.
And let's just keep it going, guys. All right. Thank you so much for joining. We'll see you in the next one. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Emily. Bye, everybody.
Thanks.